right, Gentlemen Badass Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This is Josh Kidney. With me, as always, McDoyle.
Hello, hello.
And today we've got an awesome guest. I think you're really going to like what he has to say. We've got the founder and CEO of MJST. We've got Mark Jewell. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited about this.
Yeah. Excited to kind of pick your brain a little bit. So with all of our guests, we like to get into background to start with. So tell us a little bit about kind of where you grew up, what you were like as a kid, maybe some funny, interesting stories from back then, if you've got any.
All right. Well, I mean, diving right into it, I'm probably the only guest you're going to have on who grew up on a leech farm.
Yeah. Yep. I don't think I've ever heard of that type of thing.
You're not going to find a lot of those, but I grew up in central Minnesota, a little town called Long Prairie. That was home. I spent the first 19 years of life literally living on the same place with the same parents and all the things. Had a really pretty privileged childhood, except for the sucky chores, which was literally trapping leeches. I mean, that was our thing.
And you were doing that for bait?
Yeah, literally
fishing?
for fishing bait. My old man was at one point was the second largest exporter of live leeches for fishing bait out of the state of Minnesota.
Wow.
So, fun fact about north and north central Minnesota, there's lots of sloughs and ponds and lakes, has the most abundant population of live leeches on the planet.
Eesh.
So,
So you're saying I shouldn't go swimming in a pond
you
in
might want to double check that one.
Minnesota? Ugh.
Yeah, double check that
But
one.
there's a niche for you, but I mean,
Yeah.
talk about filling a need.
Yeah.
It's a unique need.
Right.
So what do those chores look like?
So, when you guys are done watching this video, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can scroll away to or just search how to trap leeches. We actually have I still to this day have the #1 video on YouTube
Really?
for how to trap leeches. Yeah, I made a video. So the old man being in the wholesale business, at some point margins were getting thin. He was getting kind of squeezed out by innovation, just market changing. There were certain things like Canada closed the border to you can't take aquatic species from the U.S. into Canada because of invasive species and things like that. And that killed about half of his business. So about 2009, I'd been out of college for 5 years, and we were talking about this one day. So, well, let's just screw going through the bait shop at your razor thin margins. Like, let's just sell straight to the fishermen. Instead of selling 25 pounds at wholesale to the bait shop, we'll sell it straight to Mick.
Yeah.
And ship them a pound, but we're going to, obviously charge $40 a pound instead of $17 a pound.
Right.
And it raised the profit margin per pound dramatically. And, you got to figure out a way to promote your stuff and get it out there. So I actually made a video of him trapping the leeches. That's where we got into this, kind of thing. So, that's how we got Jewell Outdoors going as a spin-off, actually, as Jewell Bait, which is completely unrelated to what I do now for a living. But awesome. So that was fun. Chores growing up were literally, we would go to this, we had a packing plant in town where they butcher cattle, right? We would buy beef liver off the packing plant by the ton. So literally just envision driving up in your pickup and say, I need a ton of beef liver, right? You buy these big boxes, it's frozen. You bring it home, you let it thaw for a couple hours, and we had this huge ass meat grinder. And what we do is you back the tractor up to the meat grinder, because to turn the auger, you had to hook it up to the PTO on the tractor to get it to go. And that's how we got the thing spinning. And you just throw this beef liver in and it extrudes out the other end, and that's leech bait. So you'd have a ton of this beef liver, and you'd take a little ice cream pail, and then we had these traps that were made out of sheets of aluminum. Go watch the video. You'll get much better.
I bet your backyard smelled just wonderful.
Every day was like just a treat for your nose and everything else. But that's how we got leech bait, and we had 500 traps. I had a fleet of little 10-foot John boats and 6-foot set of oars, and we would just go around trapping wherever you could find water. And we were able to raise a few too. We put them in a stock pond and try to get them to grow bigger, and then we'd have to trap them back. But that was from the time the ice melts in Minnesota until about mid-July, when the leeches spawn and they get harder to keep alive in captivity. That was it. Every day, 7 days a week, 12, 14 hours a day, just rowing a boat, trapping leeches. So
there's a business education for you.
Yeah.
So
it's a good business, though.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you graduated from leech farming did you go to college then after that? After that, what did that look like for you?
Yeah. So, I graduated high school, went to the University of Minnesota, got a degree in education, but I went back every single summer. While my friends were doing internships. So why would I do an internship when I can go home for 8 weeks and make $10K trapping leaches?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So to me, it just made sense.
Yeah. Right.
I made money, and I had the rest of the summer to screw off, go back to my fraternity house and whatever, drink beer, whatever, the things that were important to me at that time. So, so that's what we did. That was, that literally stuck with, I was still involved in the business all the way up until about 2014. So not that long ago. I mean, just about 5 years ago when we officially shut operations down after my dad passed away. So, so that's really where it became. Yep.
So then when did you end up transitioning to doing what you're doing now?
Well, there was, I have to go back in time really, even before this. So I grew up, I got to give you a little bit of a snapshot of my old man because it played a lot into what I've become and my mentality about how I do things and how I go about life and business. When you're raised like by a lifetime entrepreneur, it's really hard. Like when that's your experience and that's your model of the world and your brain is programmed with figuring out how to make shit happen and get things done. Like that's just your model of the world. It's really tough to have a boss. Yeah. Right.
Non-conformist attitude. Yeah.
Right. So before the leeches, my dad was all of his life, his main thing, even though he did a lot of things, he was a trapper. Since he was a teenager, he trapped fur. Trapped fox, mink, beaver, skunk, you name it. Like if it was walking around, like he could find a way to catch it. And so prior to the bait business, we actually had a fur business, and we had 500 fox on our farm, female fox that would get bred in the winter. They'd give birth in the spring. You'd raise these pups up over the summer and early fall, and then we'd kill them and skin them. And that was the business. And then we'd trap. That was my earliest childhood memories were jumping in the pickup, driving around the countryside, checking fox traps, catching coyotes. And then we go, check the beaver traps, just all these different trap lines. That's all we did. So I grew up around, that kind of stuff. And you learn, you just observe, you absorb, what it's like to kind of live life on your own terms and create your own stuff. And somewhere in the middle of all of the things that he did, the old man was he was a crop duster. Okay, so he was a pilot, and then he was, even more batshit crazy. Let's do crop dusting. Let's fly egg planes full of chemicals 10 feet off the ground at 110 miles an hour, right, while we're spraying, and then do the things. And that
sounds awesome to me, actually. Yeah. Right? I wanted to be a pilot, and I wanted to be a crop duster.
Yeah, exactly. I can't help but like watch that, and in some ways, like still feel that connection with my dad. Yeah, like every time you see him in the summer spraying soybeans or whatever. But so. When one day, he always told stories. I mean, he actually crashed his crop duster twice, walked away from it. Totally, it was just a guy who had 9 lives, and he probably was, the original gentleman badass, kind of guy, right? He told me one day when I was like 16. He said, when you figure out, he said basically when I was crop dusting, flying 10 feet off the ground at 110 miles an hour, he said, there's nothing else going on the planet. Yeah. In my mind, like I am 100% in that moment, and time stands still. And like when time stands still, as you guys have done, I'm sure in different, whether it's in fighting or in your career in some way, shape, or form, like when you're in that moment, there's not much else going on. Yeah. Right? You're fully present to that fist flying at your face or the, the whatever it is, right? And he told me one day, he stopped. And he said, "You figure out what that is for you. Find a way to do that every day the rest of your life and get paid for it." And so it was a couple years later. I'd been involved in youth leadership organizations, particularly the FFA, Future Farmers of America, right? And or so it used to be called, now National FFA Organization under the new branding. But that was I had gotten elected into some leadership roles, and I had a chance to start traveling a little bit and going to these like summer leadership camps and being the camp counselor. Okay. And I got a chance to go on stage and like be the guy or be on the team that was running the training. And it hit me one day. I was like around 18 years old. Like, like this is the thing that I do. Like when I'm training, when I'm speaking, if I'm on a stage, if I'm doing a coaching call with a client, it doesn't matter. But if I'm in that teaching mode, for that hour, or that half day or that day or the 2 days, or, we start our events out. When we do our events here in Omaha, we go to McDoyle's at, 6:00 in the morning, give these people an experience they probably have never had before. And we go till 9:00 that night.
Yeah.
Right. So, we're all in with a 15-hour day of training. By the time we're all done with dinner and, finishing the night, I never get tired.
Yeah.
And I don't care. Like, I got payroll to make. I got business decisions to do. Like, I got all the things. I've got a family to raise. Or I got all this, all these different things going on. But when I'm in that training mode, it's nothing else. So I always appreciated that story and his wisdom back then, saying, hey, figure out what that is. Whatever brings you into your bliss in that moment, find a way to get paid for it, and do that every day the rest of your life. So that was what. So I discovered that early. Really fortunate, and I created a lot of ways to do that. And early on, man, I was just if somebody wanted me to come do a keynote for a banquet, I'll drive 3 hours for free. For the opportunity, and that kind of parlayed into some opportunities while I was in college. I got started getting paid to fly to Boise, Idaho, for the weekend and do a 2-3 day youth leadership conference. And so I got my start in youth leadership development.
Okay.
I got a lot of reps doing that way. So, probably 12 weekends out of the school year, I get to fly somewhere and get paid. I felt so rich. Okay. It was, for the whole weekend of work, I'm talking 3 days by the time you fly out, do the thing, get home, 3, sometimes 4 days, $250.
Nice.
About like coaching a fighter.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Or being a musician.
Or being a musician.
Right.
Even more money if you're a musician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been more money.
Yeah. But the flight was paid for. The meals are paid for, or at least you get reimbursed for everything, and you get it, $250, which we probably blow at the bar on the last night because we just save all of our per diem money and go do it because we were in college, and that was the point in life we were at. But that's what we did. And that was cool, right? Because I was like, oh, now I get to get paid to do what I love. And so right after that, ended up getting hired, or just out of college, I got hired by the U.S. government, U.S. Agency for International Development. Actually got to go back and forth over 2 years, 6 or 7 times to Macedonia. And we actually built a youth leadership organization modeled off of the FFA model here in the U.S. with a non-agricultural specificity. And so that was now I'm getting paid to travel internationally. And, now you're an international speaker, and I'm getting paid. Now I'm getting paid $250 a day. Plus $100 per diem. I'm feeling really good about doing that kind of stuff. And so it was getting rewarded to just do what felt naturally good for you to do and use your talents. So that's really how I got to start in the speaking and training space. The MJST that you mentioned earlier stands for Mark Jewell Speaking and Training. And the company does much more than that, but that was what I got started. I loved that speaking role. I loved the training role, and that's how I made the transition from being a leech trapper to being a speaker. Now, there's a whole bunch of things that happened in between. I mean, as the story goes, there were because of things in the relationship and whatever, and starting having kids early on. I didn't even speak or train for 3 years. Became totally miserable. That ended about 7 years ago. I said, this has got to stop. I got to get back in touch, with my roots. And
what kind of jobs were you doing?
So the speaking thing was always a side hustle, right? It was just I'd do it on the weekends or whenever I could, use up all my PTO, to go speak. So I did. I was in sales, for a software company for a while. So we sold software. I sold software to feed mills for batching feed for cattle and pigs and everything. And then there's a school in the Twin Cities up in Minneapolis called the Academy for Sciences and Agriculture. And my job for 2 or 3 years was to literally help. How do we do this? My job was to help moms make a decision to send their kids to a charter school to learn agriculture and food science. Right? So let's get city kids to go to an ag school so they understand where their food comes from.
Yeah.
So interesting job. Was really good at it. Loved it. Left that to go start my first business, which fell flat on its face. In the interim, and in between that, while that was happening, when I saw the business going down, I ended up getting my master's degree in change management. And then I got hired by a training company to start selling training. So I was getting back closer to the training thing. The huge blessing in that is I got to learn how to sell training to businesses. So this was my learning how to grow a business, learning how to generate revenue off of the practice. The downside of it was selling safety training to businesses. Not that sexy, right? Not that entertaining. My coolest project I ever sold was an e-learning project where we would custom design e-learning modules in English and Spanish to teach barn workers in hog operations the farrowing process, right? So the birthing process with pigs, teach the farrowing process in 4 sections in English and Spanish, with the goal. I get this was a large-scale hog operation, global hog operation, with the goal of increasing the pigs per litter by 0.1.
Wow.
Right. So they measure this, like how many pigs per litter across millions and millions of sows giving birth.
Yeah.
And the goal was to increase by 0.1. 0.1 to this company would be millions of additional pigs over the course of a year. Right. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting it was an interesting sale, and I love to hunt. I love to go out and I love to prospect companies. I love to find a way to get in there and get the deal done. And I remember this was a big deal financially. It was a large deal for my company, and I got it done and I realized like, shit, like I don't think when it was done, like good for me. I felt good because I got my kill. But now I don't get to do anything. Right. Like there's no Mark Jewell in this. And that was really a defining moment for me. I was like, I got to get out of this. I got to go do the Mark Jewell thing and get my message out to the world.
In fairness, though, that job, if you're in a bar trying to impress a girl, sounds way sexier than I'm a leech farmer. I gotta tell you, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
It's probably going to get you out the door with them a lot
Right.
quicker than come on back and smell the churned up livers I have on my property.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
come a long way, kid, as they say, right?
Yeah.
So then what type of training, what type of like coaching does your company offer then? Is it all professional? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'll give you like everything operates off of the prime directive, which is the mission, and that's to help people in organizations stop surviving and start thriving.
Okay.
And that is everything that we do is based off of creating that experience for people and for companies in some way, shape, or form. So that's the foundation. We primarily are in the corporate space. Occasionally we'll get an individual that wants to come in or an entrepreneur that wants to come in, and that's cool. We take them in every time, but we're mostly working with companies. And so it could be like, let's say a sales manager wants to get more out of their sales team. So we'll bring that sales team in for a 2-day live event, and then we coach for 90 days. I found early on that there's kind of 2 schools of thought. One is you can focus specifically on the business skill aspect of helping that person be better at their job. So sales, there's certain leading behaviors that are going to get those lagging indicators, right? So there's certain things you do, prospecting, follow up, talking to people, networking, whatever, that get the end result, which is more business. That's one way you can go about it. What I found though is we teach people skill of whatever kind in business, is most of them that we encounter don't actually have the capacity to deploy the new skill. And that was an interesting little epiphany. I was in Minot, North Dakota one winter, which is a great time to go to Minot.
Yeah.
Coldest I've ever been in my life is in Minot in January.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. So I try to get my team to book me speaking gigs like in Cancun and shit for the winter months, right? This year I was in Saskatoon in February. It was negative 44 Fahrenheit the day I was in Saskatoon. It was colder than the South Pole in Saskatoon that day.
Jeez.
Right? It was literally the coldest place on the planet for my international keynote debut.
Man.
So I'm in Minot, and I had written this program called Managing Across Generations, and this is 6 years ago. But the whole point of that program was to help the baby boomers solve their millennial problems. That's it. I mean, and I was I'm in the senior class of the millennial generation, so I'm more relevant than the 60-year-old guy trying to tell you how to manage your 22-year-old employees. So I'm teaching this stuff. We talk about coaching and feedback and creating career pathways and how do you help people develop the mindset to be able to grow effectively. You got to start developing yourself for a job today that doesn't exist yet. Right. I mean, that's how we got to think about training people in the workforce today. You're developing people for career pathways that will not exist in 5 years. That's the reality in in many ways in the corporate space, because everything is changing so quickly, especially we have an agricultural focus with our business where you kind of niche down. And so in that niche, I mean, that industry is changing dramatically right now. So I get to the end of the workshop and I feel like, man, I've nailed it. I've done this 2-hour program, applause. Everybody's happy. I could see the client, the paying client in the back of the room is happy with what they got. Everything is good. And I get cornered by a few like sales managers, a GM, a CEO, and a VP. And they come over and say, hey, Mark, I get it. Like, you made this make sense. Now I understand like why we have work ethic differences, we have value differences, we have all this stuff. Like, I totally get what you're saying, the need for feedback, the need for coaching. I don't fucking have time, literally was the comment. Like, and I'm offended. Like, what do you mean you don't have time to invest in your team? Like, your most invaluable asset are your people.
Yeah.
You don't have time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I really don't have time, because not only do I have that person, but I have these other 8 people that I oversee. Plus I'm in charge of procurement. I got to buy the stuff, right? I got to manage logistics. This is the reality of a small business, right? I mean, you just don't, how do you have enough hours in the day to do all the things? I was like, interesting. Okay. So no time to coach, no time to give more feedback. What would you pay me to do it for you? Right. Until that point, I was just a speaker. I would show up, do a half-day thing or a 1-hour thing or whatever. What would you pay me to do the coaching for you? And this plays a lot into like the way I grew up, right? You see opportunity around every corner.
Yeah.
You learn how to drop in on this farm and see, could you trap this place, or can I go onto your pond back here? The skill sets I had, we had a lot of Amish where I grew up, so I got really good at talking to the Amish, so I could get permission to go trap leeches on the ponds that were on their properties. So just like all that stuff from the child, from my younger years kicks in, right? And I was like, well, what would you pay me to do it for you? Right. And so we came up with an idea, and we could do coaching for like 90 days. We do some training, we do some coaching. We agreed to a price point on that, and that was the moment here about 5 years ago now, where MJS, Mark Jewell Speaking and Training, went from that to becoming an actual coaching company.
Okay.
So, but what I found, there's a long ways to get back to the point. Like, what do you coach people on? What we found is like, we can teach them all the skills, but without the mindset, the skill set is worthless.
Okay. So how do you go about developing that mindset then?
Yeah. So part of it is, I mean, you got to help people discover that they're in survival to begin with. So we by definition in our world, in our curriculum, survival is unconscious. Okay. So you don't know that you're surviving, right? You need somebody to tell you, you need somebody to help you see, and that's where you need a coach, right? To point out the things that, so for like when I'm working out at the gym, if I'm working out with Cody, or last spring when I was, sparring a bunch, right? Like, I can't see, I'm in the frame, right? I need somebody who's outside the picture, who's outside the frame, to like help me see what I can't see. So a really good example of this, actually, we were at the gym one day, and so I realized, just for my own benefit, like, physical fitness was a huge piece of it. So if you went back 7 years ago, even 5 years ago, 5 to 6 years ago, when I first moved to Omaha, the Mark Jewell you'd see there is a shadow of what this guy is. Like, both mentally, physically, spiritually, all the things. I think at the point I was about 180 pounds, with about 23% body fat, right? And like, over the last 5 years, I've chiseled out an extra, I'm about 200 pounds today with about 9% body fat. Right. So we've
transformation.
So I saw so my capacity is way bigger than it was 5-6 years ago to do all the things that I have to do in the course of the day. I have more energy, not only to do my job, but to be present for my kids and all the stuff. So I knew that had to be a piece of what we were doing. So we'd start bringing guys over to the gym, here a couple 3 years ago, and put them through a workout. So, Nate was the guy. Nate was he's a VP at a company up in Montana. Right. So Nate rolls in, he's about 6'1", 345 that the scale would tell him about. Right. So I think at the time he's maybe
he's a big guy,
32, 34 years old. And so as the story goes, right, we do the workout, and this is a wake up moment for him. Like, he's struggling. So we go back to the mat room and we do an ab workout, which I remember being particularly intense that day, even for me. Mick put us through. We get done, and in the end, Nate is like literally like laying up in the corner on the mats, like in the fetal position, in a puddle of sweat. And Mick walks over and says, "Nate, how are you doing?" And Nate looks up and he's like, "Oh, Mick, I'm dying." And Mick looks at him and he says, "No, for the first time in your life, you're fucking living."
And Nate is an amazing success story.
Yeah.
Because and a lot of the guys that Mark brings in, I mean, they're, it's primarily the ag industry. Some of these guys, when you kind of fill out their questionnaire and their release form, they haven't worked out since high school.
Yeah.
A lot of them. Like, the last time they were active was whatever sport that they did in high school, and I think he was probably guilty of that. But what's he down now?
I mean, at one point, I think he was down around 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's maintained for the most part, still works out, still is doing good. And I mean, so just to, look at, okay, well, what does that have to do with being a better vice president or, sales manager or team leader, salesperson, whatever? Man, I mean, like,
It's got everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Like, when you start to have more energy, like, you see things.
Yeah.
Right. And, here's like he's in an industry where everybody's fighting for talent. There's just not enough people. Everybody's, stealing people for an extra $5,000 here, an extra couple grand there, an extra $1 an hour for a truck driver. But from that moment, I mean, now his CEO is in our programs, gets coached by Wade, is in a one-on-one setting. Everybody on their executive team has ended up coming through. We work with a lot of their salespeople. They actually have their competition, like people from their competition actually calling, asking how to get in. How do I come work for you? Right. So that by starting to do this stuff, and it really started with the workout and getting the body right. So we go to work on that. And so from a teaching perspective or from a coaching perspective, what is that? We call that a discovery moment. It's the moment where I discover, like, shit, I've been surviving in my body and I didn't know it. Right. So we got to have that epiphany. The light bulb goes on. I got to do something about this. Now I get to suffer with it until I get it, but until I get it better.
Yeah.
But that's becomes the reality. So then we get them in the classroom. We start focusing on, we have a model called the story framework, and that's all about owning your story 100%. So we'll actually get people sold on the idea, like, you are 100% responsible for how you respond to what's going on around you. Right. So I can't, if I'm driving out here, I can't stop somebody from cutting me off in traffic. I'm 100% responsible for how I respond to that thing. Right. That trigger is fully about me. Right. Whereas most people are going to lose their shit. They're going to be, tailgating, they're going to flip them the bird. They're going to do all the things. Right. Which accomplishes what? Right. It just spreads more hate.
Right. Yeah.
It's really all about you. So, if you don't like the story that you're living in, okay, how do I go about changing that story? So we have something called the story framework, which is a simple process based off the idea that you don't really think much about how you react to certain situations. So if you understand how the brain works in that situation, it puts you in more control to think about, like, do I really need to have that thought? Like, could we start to go to work on that? Or was that the most appropriate action, right? Could I do better next time? Or what action would be more appropriate to get a better result? So that starts to put people back in the driver's seat, right? When I get the mindset around that stuff. So rather than bitch about my boss, right, and complain about all the things, like, do I really want to live in a story where all I do is complain?
Yeah.
Right. So what action would be more appropriate? Is it possible that my boss might be also having a rough time in life right now and would benefit for me, like, just, I don't know, stop and pray for him, right? Or set a good intention, or do something nice, or ask how you could help them. Yeah. Right. As opposed to live in a victim state. So we really focus in on that and helping people get back in control. We do that at all levels. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you're CEO or if you're the entry level salesperson, if you're the floor sweeper, like, we need to own our story. And by the way, that's inside and outside of work. So we'll tell them at our live events, at the end of the day, like, hey, if I help you sell more, if I help you be better at work, if I help you do better at your job, guess what? Good for me, because your boss is going to hire me back. Yeah. Right. If we do that at the expense of your time, your peace, your sleep, and the things that are really important to you, then I failed you. Right. And people really start to listen to that. So to some extent, we're kind of like life coaches for the corporate space. Yeah. I don't like the term life coaching because it's kind of getting a little bit of a, derogatory feeling out there because it's getting a little bit overdone. And every day in my Facebook news feed, I got 17 different opportunities to become a certified life coach for $20. Right. That's a problem. Yeah. If your life coach only paid $20 to become certified, that's an issue. But I spent millions of dollars getting myself to this point to feel really relevant, right, and fully capable. And not that you have to spend that much, but you should have had your ass kicked a little bit by life to be a relevant life coach.
100%.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard Seth Godin say, he's like, there's two kinds of people in the world: people that have a coach and that people that need a coach. And the problem is that people that have a coach already have a coach, and the people that need a coach don't necessarily want a coach. So how do you get someone to the other side? How do you get them to actually realize, oh, I need to do things better. I need to be better. I need someone to help me with that.
Yeah. So the coaching begins before they hire the coach. I mean, from my perspective, if so, when we get called, if a company calls up and says, hey, we need, we're interested in working with you. Usually it's because they'll say, hey, we need sales training.
Okay.
Right. Or I need leadership training, or I need a team event, or a team building thing. Right. So what I'm interested in at that point is why. Why do they perceive the need for sales training? Right. So I'll say, okay, tell me what are the top 2 or 3 things that you would love to see better with your team when they're done with the training. If it's sales, it's almost always closing.
Oh yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Closing is, by the way, a lagging indicator that you got the first 3 steps of the sales process right.
Right. Correct.
Okay. So most people want to skip straight to the close. Like, I just want to go in, show you my features and benefits, and have you buy today.
Right.
If we lived in that world, it would be perfect. We'd all be wealthy.
Yes.
Right. And so I want to know, why does that salesperson lack the ability to ask better questions up front? Why can that salesperson not control the conversation in a better way where they could get more, right? So we have a very specific sales process for our clients where they get to it. Like, we sell the way that we train people to sell. So we start modeling up front. So this is, for us, this is the how we get people into that space. And then I will actually ask them, one of the questions I ask in the sales process is, you've probably been through some training in the past. Okay. What have you loved? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And people usually have a much longer list of what hasn't worked, because most corporate training is shit. It just is. It's not well done. It's how many bullets can I fit onto each PowerPoint slide? How many of these damn slides can I get through?
Yeah.
Right. In order to maximize your time. And that's not it. If you're 3 hours in a training and we're rushing to get through content, what the fuck did you really accomplish? Right. You got through a bunch of slides.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's pointless. It doesn't actually teach anything. I can teach people more, in an hour at Mix, and then debrief that experience with questions at the end. Right. We always say anything that's worth doing is worth debriefing.
Yeah.
So we do the activity, and then we ask, what'd you learn? Right. Or what was your discovery? But I learn more from that than I do an hour of looking at slides. Right. My change becomes deeper. So it really becomes about, most people have not considered the idea of hiring a coach to be better at life or whatever. Usually it's about a specific thing. I want to get better at selling. I want to get better at being a CEO. I want to get better at being a vice president or a manager or whatever. So you have to help people understand, like, okay, well, what is that really? What would that look like? So my next question is, like, if you could create your program to look like anything you want it to look like, what would it look like? And this is exactly how I've actually built my model, based on the answers to these questions. I didn't build the model first. I built it after I listened to my customers, which was like, we always do training, but we don't follow it up with anything. And the reality is, most companies are actually not, and just most people in life don't have the accountability systems around them to continue to implement something after they learn it. That makes
I
sense?
think one of the misconceptions about, obviously, being a coach is that people hire a coach or get a coach to get feedback. But I think all a good coach does is take you to a point where you start giving your own feedback. Like, your body gives you, at least in my line of work, your body gives you the feedback, the most important feedback that you need, and it's the urgent one. And then a coach, just once you've experienced that and once you've kind of surrendered to that process, a good coach just takes you along. But at the end of the day, it's still the person. Angelo Dundee, I quote him all the time. He's got a famous quote that a coach is only as good as the guy sitting on the stool in front of him. And if you can get a person to experience the problem, or and then acknowledge it, then you're sometimes halfway on the way there to fixing it. So
I mean, I think for us, the coach is there to drive the accountability and help you continue to do the things that you promised yourself you were going to do. Right. So I got a text from Cody last night about 8:00, and all it said was, "See you dark and early." And I completely forgot that I booked a session with him at 6:00 this morning, and I'm thinking, fuck. I was out drinking beers with a buddy who was in town. Like, I don't want to go to the gym at 6. Like, that means I got to get up at 5, right? And get my stuff together, leave the house at 5:30 in order to get there by 6. I don't want to do that. Right. But it was like, I'm not going to bail on him at this point,
Yeah.
right? I mean, he's not going to rebook a session for 6 a.m. tomorrow at 8 o'clock last night.
Yeah.
And so you're committed, and you want to make, whatever. So you got me to go,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff really works. And you need a coach sometimes to help you be accountable.
So along those lines, then, of you're only as good as the guy on the bench, and I'm kind of dealing with this in my own life. What if you're trying to coach someone and they just don't want to get better? Like, do you have any tricks for reaching that person? Or
I have a saying in fighting that you can't make a racehorse out of a donkey. And sometimes there are people who they're just not cut out for it, and it's hard sometimes as a coach to be honest and say you're just not there yet, or maybe you just know that they're never going to get there. I have no problem telling someone that, because in my world, when they're stepping into my world, there's an inherent danger to fighting. And it's not for everybody. And sometimes I have to be the bad guy and say, listen, kid, this isn't for you, and you just got to tell them that. Now, your space is obviously a little different than mine.
Yeah, it is and it isn't, in a way. Here's what I've gotten more and more comfortable with over time is that let's say when a company hires us, the heart of who I am and what I want to do is you want to help every single person that you work with level up. And sometimes, unfortunately, the right answer is that they just get to level out.
Level out, okay.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's the reality. I mean, that's and if a company pays us a decent amount of money to coach that person, and then the end result is they end up leaving, sometimes it's worth it because that person was never invested, or never as invested as you were. They were never really going to level up, and they're probably actually going to cost you more money than if you had the right person in that spot working with those, especially in sales, having the right person, in that space. But same at the, I've got some, VPs that I've worked with that really, they're not the best person for that job. They got promoted because they were the best at what they did before. Right. Yeah. But they're not driving the level of accountability and results within their team because that's not who they are. And that, we should be okay with identifying that some people are not on the right seat of the bus.
Right.
That's just a really good business practice. So there are going to be times we'll get people that come in, man, and it's just nothing you say, nothing you do, and we're very good at getting behavior change. But that's rare. I mean, that's a very small percentage of who we work with. The more common situation would be somebody who's just maybe they're not super lit up about life right now, and so that's reflecting at work.
Yeah.
So we have within our team and within my practice, my belief is that the world around me, the people in my world, what's going on in my world, my perceptions of what's around me at any given moment is just a reflection of the collective whole of my thoughts. So in other words, my subconscious is creating this world out in front of me. Okay, we can get into how it's all an illusion anyway, and that maybe is a different podcast. But I'm creating this illusion, right? And I decide who I let into my space and who I don't let into my space, and how much time I spend with certain kinds of people, and that all impacts the overall experience. And so sometimes you get people who haven't taken control of their story. They haven't figured out how to go from surviving to thriving in any behavior, and so they're still stuck in that victim mindset. And so it's easier for me to make work the problem, my boss the problem, to have a scapegoat that's not me, right? Rather than own my shit. That's easier. That's where most of your disengagement in the workplace is today. As I say, I'm not passionate about what I do. Well, it's not that you're not. It's not that you're not passionate about what you do. You may just not be passionate about anything right now.
Yeah.
Including work.
Yeah.
So if we can help people get re-engaged and reignite that passion with themselves, it's funny, without even going to a new company or a different job, many times all of a sudden the passion at work shows back up.
Well, I was going to ask, I mean, you may have kind of answered the question already, but what if you've got someone like that was me, 5 years ago, hated my job.
Yeah.
And you said earlier talking about, find the thing that kind of puts you in that flow state and then find a way to get paid for it and then do that the rest of your life. What if it's there's a couple different ways. What if you think you know what that is and you just can't find a way to make money? Or what if you don't know what that is and you're just miserable with your job? What advice do you have for people like that?
Yeah. So, it really comes back to the prime thing, which is like, we're all in control. Three of us sitting around this table, like, we're all in control of my experience with the things going on out here. Some people are just a little bit lost, right? So if you can get that guide, have a coach, and hell, even if you get lucky and your company's willing to pay, a coach to work with you, that may even, like, at the risk of, like, you end up finding something else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Number one, actually, in my opinion, and it's easy because we're the company that gets paid to do the coaching. So I'm obviously biased. So take it with a grain of salt. It's worth it to make that investment in people to get that person off your team. If you won't do it yourself.
Yeah.
Because inherently most bosses know when they need to fire somebody, but they'd rather pay me first to get validation.
Or like Amazon. Amazon has that policy where they'll pay you, I think after 3 months or something, they'll pay you $5,000 to quit.
Yeah.
Like, here's $5,000 if you want to leave. And it kind of incents people to quit if they aren't really happy where they are. So
now you're big into kind of going deep into people and into their whole psyche and obviously, like I said earlier on, in my world there's inherent danger, so you really want to make sure that you're putting someone in harm's way that's capable of dealing with it. I would probably argue to that point too, that most people that tend to gravitate towards fighting are usually exercising some kind of demon in order to do it, because it's not fucking normal to go, I think I'll stand in front of this guy and see who can knock each other out. That's not a dream that most kids have that they want as a career. So it takes a certain mindset to do it, but you also want to make sure that person is in their right mind when they get in there. Now you're big into getting inside people's heads and kind of scrambling them a little bit. You want to elaborate on some of the methods that you use, from like the basic sales guy to this, and obviously the CEO probably has a different experience and
right. Yeah. Well, so at the base level programming, so we have kind of a pathway, if you will, a guide for going from basic stuff to some of the extreme stuff that I do. But we really go in and start to work on, like, okay, where's your mindset at? We use journaling, we use meditation, we use music in the classroom. It's all about the one thing that's consistent through all the different methods is we use the power of state to get people working on stuff and like realizing some space. So just think about like a normal training classroom where you're running through slides and just flipping through pages in the notebook and filling stuff out. It doesn't really work to create change, right? Because now I know I can just always come back to that notebook and read the things. I don't create personal meaning with it. So we create state where it's like literally like I'll get people up in a conference room or a room of 100 people, I don't care, get them out of their chair, moving around, talking and discussing, because that creates personal engagement with the content as opposed to just talking at them, right? Or having them read a book. So that's a state, right? The same group, I can drop them in 5 minutes later, put on reflective music, put them in a journal, right? And put them into almost a little bit of a meditative state where they start writing. Now I've created another level of mindset meaning. Okay. So that's like the base level stuff. So it's all about how can we create a different state for something to move through. Right. And it's like, if you're you're listening to this and you're feeling like freaking lethargic at your desk right now, cause you're watching this at 2:00 in the afternoon, like stand up, put on the freaking earbuds and go for a walk and listen to this. You're not getting shit done anyway.
Right.
Change your state. Right. So start to move around, shift the body around. I've learned this 15 years ago from the guy who taught me how to be a trainer, to 2 months ago, I was at Tony Robbins, where it's literally 6 days sitting in a room for 14 to 18 hours every single day. And he keeps it 45 freaking degrees in there. He has this place pumping frigid air into the space. Why? Because it creates a state that keeps you awake. And then like a break, there's no bathroom breaks. There's no like occasionally you get to break and go get a sandwich, right? But it's pretty much straight through from 9 a.m. until maybe 1 a.m. And he does it to open up the mind, to create a state to allow real permanent change to begin. So it's all about creating the state. So we do that. We do stuff in the classroom. We do some extreme stuff where I'll take people out on the farm. We go for a run and we have them actually like literally get into we mimic sort of a fight flight response in the body through breath work. And then we get them actually screaming their affirmation. So I got them up on a hill up in Tacoma, right? Standing in a soybean field saying, I'm a fucking force of nature. I will not be denied. My soul deserves more than this. So they actually start to get into the psyche, and we can actually start to reprogram little by little. If you literally said to yourself every day, for however long it takes, I'm a force of nature. I will not be denied. Like, you actually start to embody that eventually, because you're actually creating the neural pathways that believe it.
Sure.
So that was one of my affirmations that I created 5 years ago. I didn't believe it at the time, but there's no part of me today that doesn't. Right. So those are things that we do. And then we take them, we've got those that want to go to the next level with me. For the last 2 years, I've been taking people down to the jungle in South America, where we go in and we work with ayahuasca and some of that stuff. So we've got an experience down there that it's fast. It literally takes 2 or 3 days, and people will come away off of depression and anxiety meds, completely reshape their energy. I've had 2 people this last year that were completely suicidal, like literally had shit scripted out on how they were going to end it. And now they're all like completely reignited with purpose, back with their families, like doing all the things. So
and they're using this and other hallucinogenics with huge success to treat PTSD now in other countries, not here yet.
There's a new documentary. I don't know how new it is, but I just recently heard it, called Trip of Compassion.
Yeah,
which is Israeli.
Yeah.
But they're using MDMA.
MDMA,
and
yeah.
seeing amazing results when it comes to PTSD. So
yeah, I just saw that on Tim Ferriss's podcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
there's some really good practices out there that are contrary to what the government might have you believe.
Yeah.
It's very safe. You literally, you could do something stupid. You need to be in a controlled environment. You need to be with people that know what they're doing. This is not a party. This is not a weekend getaway. This is not an escape. Because if you go with me and do this, you will not want to go back. Right? For some reason, I keep going back, but but that's because my part of my calling and this part of my work is bringing people to that next level and literally accessing my own experience in this. 2 years ago, I went for the first time, and my business, coming back. I often say this, so if I can go to work on rewiring the subconscious, the outside world eventually has to start to match up. Okay, it takes time, but eventually it has to start to match up. So over the last couple of years, I've developed the most amazing team. We have loyal, amazing customers who continue to come back. I think we brought back in our top program, 100% that were in last year are back this year. 70% of our total clients are back with us this year. Certain relationships that needed to go are gone. The relationships that needed to stay are stronger than ever. My physical being has completely improved. I got in a fight, improved myself that I could do that kind of thing. So I had all this massive experience, and the business is up, 250% in gross revenue in the last 2 years. And this year we're going to double it again. So the results speak for themselves. You talked about PTSD. I took my nephew with, who's been, I brought him down to stay with me for a little bit beforehand to kind of help get him around some positive people and realize hey, life can be better. Don't end this. Don't do anything stupid. And took him down in 2 days in the jungle. All the bad stuff was gone. It was healed. It was better.
Yeah, Mark, when he got back, he shared a photograph with me of his nephew that was taken kind of right when he came to Omaha, right?
Well, it was just last fall. That first one was from last fall.
Yeah, and dark spot. You can look at a photograph and see this person struggling, and then when he got back, it doesn't even look like the same kid. It is the same kid, but the smile, it doesn't lie. There was lighter. Some, huge transformation that happened with that kid down there.
Yeah, it was very effective. Yeah. So now, here's a guy who, we weren't real sure whether he'd be with us anymore at some point, by his own choice. And who is now, he's back. He's just got an apartment here in Omaha, and he's trained to be a Navy SEAL. He's going to BUDS. He's met with all the recruiters. He's getting his paperwork in to be in the Navy, get fully transferred out of the Marines into the Navy so he can go to BUDS and become a SEAL. I mean, he's already passed the first level. Like he passed the physical fitness test to be in this, next level program. So, I mean, that's literally to go from like, not wanting to be here to being like knowing what your purpose is, right? Remembering who you are, why you came here, and starting to move on with that is, that was one for me, man. Like I was already a believer, right? And I felt an even greater weight because I'm taking my sister's kid,
Sure.
to the jungle. And I'm like, what if he wanders off? I had the thoughts, and I kept checking on him, right?
Yeah.
And then just one day he comes in and he's like, I watched him sit down in this little, we call it the Maloka, which is the room that we sit in when you just want to go sit and meditate. And he's journaling, he's excited. I could see him. And he's like, well, I said, what'd you learn? He said, I'm a freaking killer. But that was a moment, like you could see he was back on fire. And here's what had happened. There's this little koi pond in the middle of this sanctuary that we have. It's all outdoors. We get to wander around outside, in this safe space. And all of a sudden everybody hears him jump into the damn koi pond. Right. And we're like, and he was like a state swimmer in high school, good athlete and everything. So I was like, oh, it's just Brent, doing his thing. And he goes quiet for a while. And all of a sudden everybody hears just like over the silence, got you, fucker. And he found a frog and he was stalking the frog. Right. And he caught the frog. Right. And it was just like, that was the moment where he realized like, oh, this is my purpose, is to go out and do these things to protect other people.
Crazy.
That was super cool. Yeah.
Hunt.
Yeah.
To hunt. To hunt.
Yeah.
That is his purpose. Yeah. So, whatever, bring them back into the point a little bit. And that's all fun to talk about. It's definitely not for everybody. I always tell people, like, if you feel called, it's time, then let's go. But it's,
and you can have a bad experience on it too, right? Like if you have some demons lurking, sometimes those come out too. Have you ever seen that?
I've never really seen anything come out. I think this is where the Terrence McKenna used to call it this, the set and the setting, right? Has got to be super important. Is really so with with the right. The shaman we have there's been doing this for 70 years. She's a magnificent woman. She's seen everything. She does a really good job of setting up certain things that are subconscious triggers to kind of keep you moving along. She does daytime ceremonies instead of nighttime ceremonies. So you can see what's going. You can watch somebody's body language. You can see if they need a little bit of help. Right. This process for me has been completely healing because it's taking me to the edge of all the things. I mean, to like literally experience what it's like to die, and then, wake up and realize that it's okay. Like there's nothing wrong, but it's like literally expanding your capacity. But, those are moments when I said, okay, a little help here. Like,
Well,
so you got to have the right, I mean, anybody who's considering doing something, okay, there's a lot of, they call them ayahuasqueros and I'll say just bad people that are taking advantage of US dollars, people that want to go down to Peru and places like this to do stuff. I would encourage you not to go unless you have somebody who you absolutely trust with your life, who's been there, who knows what they're doing.
Well, this kind of transformation, like we've had a couple of guests on our podcast that have had some kind of like profound transformation. And the one kind of common thing that keeps coming up is like, the old Mark Jewell has to die. Like there's a certain kind of death of where you're at in that stage of your life before you have a breakthrough. And to me as a martial artist, that's kind of what belts has always signified. Like I become a blue belt. It's the death of my white belt. It's the death of my, as you kind of go through the ranks. Original martial arts only had 2 belts, the original Japanese martial arts, 3, white, black, white, where you kind of become full circle. But at some point, the old you dies, so that you make room for a new, you get this metamorphosis that happens.
Yeah. Well, I agree.
And especially with martial arts, with the whole death metaphor, like there's really not much you can do in life outside of martial arts that's going to take you and make you feel like that close to death. Unless you're having a real life near death experience, because I mean, I've done CrossFit workouts. They're hard. Don't get me wrong, but it's nothing like
Nobody's crushing you.
No, the suffocation, the fear, like all of that balled into one thing. I mean, it's definitely revolutionary. So along those same lines, taking it to the next level, and then about Mick talking about takes a certain type of person to stand in front of each other and try to knock each other out.
Yeah.
You went to that level. You mentioned it earlier, getting in a fight. Tell us about competing in the Muay Thai Nationals. What led to that, and what'd you learn through that?
Yeah. So what led to it was simple. I have a new fitness goal every 90 days, and that's sometimes it's something simple. Sometimes like a body fat goal. Sometimes it's a muscle gain. It's one time I want to do 100 burpees in 5 minutes. And like I kept hitting all these numbers. I think right now I'm in the middle of it's the end of first quarter, so of 2019. So this is my 17th 90 day or something like that. I just run out of ideas. Like this happened. I literally ran out of fucking ideas, and that's so I says it to Mick one day.
I got one.
I'm like, Mick, I need a 90-day goal. What do you got for me? Yeah, and he's like, I'll get you a fight. Right, and it's over the next 6 months, I learned Muay Thai. Started learning Muay Thai and how to fight. So, that was good. But to come back to the to dying of your old self. Like I don't know how many times I had to give up the safety factor, or let go of some protection or whatever you're protecting in the ring in order to get there. And I don't think I'll probably never forget. Like I went in, I got TKO'd in the second round, and I'm on cloud freaking 9, even though, because all the good little neurochemicals that kick in when you're in the ring, right? Now it's over, and you lived and you're alive, and it feels good. Yeah. Right. But I walk over to the edge, and Mick's like, welcome to the warrior class. And I was like, fuck yes.
Just punched your ticket.
Yeah. And there was a part of me that died, that got left, that that now I'm this, I feel more certain, right? I feel greater capacity. I feel like more of a badass, in all ways. And that has, to this day, that has not left.
Awesome. So what, if you don't mind sharing, what's your current 90-day fitness goal?
Yeah. So we're at the end. And so this one, in this quarter, was just to be able to get down to about a 5:30 mile on the tread, which we did.
Nice.
So we got that done, and I'm really sick of running right now. I don't want to do a lot more running. I feel pretty good. The cardio was in shape, and so now we're going into the next quarter, and I'm thinking I'm pretty well convinced I can do a 25-minute Ginger Ninja.
I'd say you could.
I think I can get to 25. I'm at 29:41 was my last best time. So I think I can shave off 4.5 minutes. I've done the math. I know if I can get my climb, if I can get my tread.
If you're doing a 5.5 minute mile?
Yeah.
Then yeah.
Well, most people aren't going to know what a Ginger Ninja is. Tell us what that is.
Well, first of all, I got to give credit where it's due. One of our trainers, Brian Corley, who's a badass, came up with this idea of just a gut check to see where your fitness is at. And this was at the time, it was in relation to fighting. So you basically, you do 4 exercises, and you take your cumulative time. So there's no breaks. You go from one to the other, to the other, to the other. And and you can do them in any order. And I've tried doing them in all kinds of orders, and I always end up with about the same time anyway, so I don't think it really matters. But you do a 1 mile run, 1,000 meter row, 100 floors on a stair stepper, and then 1,000 meter vertical climb on the Versa Climber. And we've always said that anything under 33 is phenomenal. 30 is extra phenomenal, and then below that is fucking studly.
Yeah.
So, but it's a quick gut check that Brian came up with, and we've been using it ever since. And now that we're doing the workout of the weeks on video, we'll do a little clip of how to get that done if you have that equipment available to you. And the weird thing, like the Versa Climber is kind of it's the one machine that they're not in most gyms, but they're an ass kicker, and there's no real other machine, maybe with like maybe a Jacob's ladder might be close, and that can kick your ass in its own unique way too. But
Yeah.
but doing the exercises in that order,
Yeah.
it's
See, I made the mistake the first time I did it of doing the run last, and that was terrible. So I always I go run, Versa climber, stair stepper, row machine.
I don't think it
the way I
matters.
do
At
but-
some point in that workout, you're asking yourself, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
but that's part of the idea. And
Yeah.
then it's only 35 minutes. Like that's nothing. Like I just have to stay suffering for.
Yep.
But yeah, I think you could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel
what actually doing the fight last summer and all the training leading up to it, the amateur fight 2-minute round, that to me has become almost like a permanently wired in thing. And I still go back to this 2-minute time frame. I can do anything for 2 minutes. Right. If it's a argument with my ex-wife, like
2 minutes.
I can make it for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Like I had lunch with her yesterday and I sat there and took it on the chin for 2 minutes because she had some shit she needed to get off her chest. I'm like, fine, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
I can take it. I don't need to say anything. Right. Yeah. So I can do that. I can, if it's something with my kids or if it's, a tense moment with a client or a coaching. So sometimes I got to push coaching clients, you got to push them to the brink and like, can I hold this space? Can I keep this container for 2 minutes, even though it feels like it sucks right now? That was a big reprogram for me, going through that. So the other place, this was another 90 goal for this last quarter. Creighton has a 2K rowing competition on the Concept 2 rowers, and so I did that last year. I lost by 2 seconds, and that was not going to happen again this year. So I went in and I used the David Goggins technique, right? So he talks about stealing their souls, right? So I went in and I had developed this technique to get out ahead by about 100 meters right away. And you can fall back in to about 50 or 60, but once you're about that far ahead and you're 2 or 3 minutes into it, the people start to feel like they can't catch you. And so I completely shifted that, and just for the first 2 minutes and the last 2 minutes, I was all in. And then I had that 3 minutes in between. I did about a 7 minute, taking me about 7 minutes to row on a Concept 2 right now. And that was a game changer. So the 2 minute thing that came from fighting I can apply that to so many areas.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think I see a jiu-jitsu tournament in his future.
I was just thinking that. Turn him to the dark side.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
Because the one thing about jiu-jitsu though, we've said it before, is that jiu-jitsu you can do your whole life.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's still a chess game and it's very physical, but there's a calmness that sometimes happens when you're rolling, that unless you're at the highest levels of fighting, like a ballistic, like boxing, Muay Thai, you never really get to experience, and you certainly don't get to enjoy when someone's trying to punch your head off, unless you're just amazingly calm and you're and you've done this and you've seen it thousands of times. But even a novice can experience that their first day in the gym. It's brutal. You're getting crushed, but there's a point where you kind of have this experience like, hang on, this sucks, but like he's not really going to hurt me, like and I think that's part, like when I said like welcome to the warrior class, I think that's what that really is that realization, like nothing else can hurt me. Like if I can do this to myself, if I can force myself into this situation, everything else is fucking easy, really. It may be a pain in the ass every now and again, or someone may be a pain in the ass or whatever, but like if you're crushing yourself on the daily, most of your shit just doesn't. It's just handbags. Doesn't matter.
So I think I heard you talking the other day. You've got a book coming out here pretty soon. Tell us a little bit about that.
You bet.
If you can.
So absolutely. We're in the process. I should say I've been in the process for several years, knowing what this needed to be. It's based off of the content of my cornerstone model that I created years ago and continue to teach, called The Survivor's Guide to Thriving, and based off the concept that anybody can go from surviving to thriving in any behavior, with any relationship, in any situation, at work or with a customer, or basically any area of life, just following these 7 steps. I mean, it's the 7 steps will be specific to you, but the guide is basically the concept. Also based off the concept that any of us are surviving in some way at some point. You just don't know it yet. Right? And then it's possible, right, to help people discover more of what's possible for them and move through the journey to go from surviving to thriving. Also, we all have a mental model in our experience from life of what it's like to be surviving and what it's like to be thriving. So people get that. So that's how we help a lot of people. It's just saying, you know what, I want less of this, right? Less of the crap, more of what's good. So a working title on the book is Survivor's Guide to Thriving. Still working with the book company to get pieces of it out. So, depending when this goes live, we're looking at probably November, December to actually have the book out. Okay. Playing with actually the title, just straight up Survival is Dead. And just go a little bit more badass, a little bit more direct and get people's attention. And then we'll work on the tagline. But so I've hired the same company that produced David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. I don't know if I'm getting the same author or not yet, but same ghostwriter, but we're starting to pull out pieces and I've got the outline written. I'm excited about that. So we'll have the audiobook, the whole thing, the book tour, the book promotion. We're going on a keynote tour based off the book next winter.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then where can people find you online if they're kind of interested in your services?
Yeah. So from a coaching perspective on our corporate side, it's just markjewelltraining.com. Okay. Jewell has 2 L's, Jewell. Markjewelltraining.com is the website. Lots of good resources there. Even better space, I would encourage you just to go to your app store and type in #ThriveToday. So Google Play or your Apple App Store, tap in #ThriveToday if you're watching the... Where's the camera? There we go. If you're on YouTube, type in that. It'll drop in, and it's a free app. We've got tons of articles, recipes, content, advice, and it's a competitive community for personal growth. So it's a gamified social learning platform that keeps people accountable to doing the stuff on a day-to-day basis and whatever you want. So that's a good one. Let's see, Instagram, Mark Jewell. Okay. Facebook.com/themarkjewell. Okay. Somebody else took Mark Jewell, so I trumped him.
Nice, Mark Jewell. I'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes as well, so be able to see that. Mick, you got a book for us today?
I do, and it's kind of hits on some of the things that we've talked about. The book is 12 Rules for Life: An Antidote to Chaos by Jordan Peterson. Some of our viewers may be familiar with Jordan Peterson. He tends to appeal to disenfranchised white men, which I'm sure is some of our viewership. But he's a Canadian clinical psychologist and a professor of psychology, and has kind of become over the years a YouTube sensation with some of his rebuttals on especially liberal college campuses. He's created quite the stir. It's a book. This book is a slog. It's tough to read. It's like 370 pages. I started to read it and I said, fuck it, I'm just going to get the audio version instead and just listen to it in my car. It's over 10 hours. But there's some good stuff in it. But just be forewarned that it's not an easy read. 370 pages, and I'll just say I enjoyed the book. Even though I'm going to sound like I didn't. There's some great jewels in there, but I kind of disagree a little bit with some of his ideology, Judeo-Christian. Sometimes that loses me, but if that's your space, then more power to you. But basically, he says that in order to create order in your life, you have to first of all agree that all life is suffering, and that was probably the ideology that I disagree with. I don't think you have to suffer in order to enjoy life and to get where you want to go. I think that some kind of hardship is great, so long as you come out the back end of it okay. But his rules are basically this. Rule 1, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Now, Jordan Peterson goes into this long diatribe about lobsters and cockroaches. And but, I remember being a kid and my grandmother smacking me in the back of the head quite often going, stand up straight. And, I think there's a lot of value to how you present yourself and the nonverbal cues that you give off, especially to the people around you. Rule 2 is treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping, which I think is just being kind to yourself and to other people. It's just a good rule to have. Rule 3, make friends with people who want the best for you. Loyalty, in a nutshell. Rule 4, compare yourself to who you were yesterday and not who someone else is today. And like I said, this is a long book, so there's pretty in-depth descriptions of and little cool stories of how he illustrates this. Rule 5, do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. As a parent, I think that's a fucking great rule, because there are times when your children can irritate the shit out of you, and it's not a good space to be in for very long periods of time. So, kind of a clever rule. Rule 6: set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Don't throw stones in a glass house. Rule 7: pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. I think we've all talked about being in things for the long haul, and how being in a process for an extended period of time is really where true growth can manifest itself. Rule 8: tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Rule 9: assume the person you are listening to might know something you don't. And rule 10: be precise in your speech. Words is hard, Josh, right? Now, we were talking before the podcast. I think he could have just stopped the book right here, and it's phenomenal. Rule 11 and 12 kind of are probably two of the longest explanations in the book. But rule 11 is do not bother children when they are skateboarding. And basically what he's saying is, and this is where Jordan Peterson gets kind of controversial, is he's saying that boys need to toughen up. Now, Jordan Peterson also believes that it's okay to smack children. He's kind of on record for that. So basically, let your kids do stuff that might have a little bit of danger to them. Skateboarding, that's his kind of analogy. Again, like all of the chapters in this book, he goes in quite deep with long explanations of it. But yeah, I don't think it's not a bad thing if little boys are little boys, and it's okay. Unless you're sexually ambiguous and you don't know if you're a boy or a girl. That's a whole other podcast, and I'm sure we're going to get to that at some point. Rule 12 is, and these are his words, pet a cat when you encounter one on the street, with the subtitle of dogs are okay too. And basically it's his long-winded explanation of every now and again, just smell the roses. Like, it's okay to take a moment and just be present about where you're at or what the situation is. So it's a good book. It's got some great lessons in it. Again, Peterson is controversial, and it's been my personal experience with psychologists and the world of psychology that sometimes people are drawn to those professions because they have some stuff maybe wrong with them themselves. I came to this realization because right out of college, I got to work in a psychiatric hospital. I was the fitness coordinator, and I used to remark that the only difference between the staff and the patients is that the staff had keys. They could go home at night. So, go into the book knowing that you're dealing with a clinical psychologist who's writing a book to the masses, and you can draw your own inferences from the book. But overall, it's a good book. It's got some great lessons. His version of them in his mind are written in stone, but I think if you just take the the lessons. It's a pretty good way to lead your life. So Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules to Living: An Antidote to Chaos. If you have a week or so,
Yeah.
check it out.
That's actually one of the books I started reading, and I mean, I thought it was good, but I couldn't read it in the 3 weeks allotted by the library, so I had to take it back, and I haven't been able to get it back yet. So I made it to chapter 5 in 3 weeks. It's dense, but it's got some good information.
Yeah, it does. It does. You're going to be in for the long haul.
Yeah. I'll have that book up on the bookshelf on the website, thegentlemanbadass.com. Swing by there. As always, subscribe to us on your podcast provider if you haven't already. We really appreciate that. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We've got some pretty interesting things coming down the road. Looking forward to filling you in on those soon enough. But
Mark, you have a podcast too, right?
We do. It's called The Survivor's Guide to Thriving Podcast, and we're up to pushing up on episode 100 here pretty quick. So There's a ton of content, and really for all areas, and definitely some good stuff for business leaders in there as well. So another one coming out later this year, a 10-episode series where I'm interviewing only the A-list players in leadership out in the corporate space on different topics, from meditation to business leadership and everything in between, called Wake Up Corporate America. So you can start at some point. I'm guessing if you're watching this after this episode's been out for a while, check into that.
Awesome.
That's going to be just a 10-episode series.
Great.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us today. Any final words, Mark, or?
Yeah, just tell you what, survival's dead. It's your time to thrive. Go do the things that it requires for you, to be able to live whatever that story is for you, and don't settle.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Excellent words. Well, thanks for tuning in, Mark. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for
thank
having me
you.
on, guys. This was fun.
And we will see you next time.